This is Mike Papa Hotel, which I touched on earlier. It's still at the museum in Regina. This is actually the first location. I've actually got the series with the crane and everything else, so it's only just been mounted. It's at its first location at the RCMP Training Academy in Depot. Later on, this is our chapel on the left. Later on, the brick building behind was demolished, and that's where the Centennial RCMP Museum, now empty, sits. And the aircraft was moved on the other side of where this building used to be, and was in front of the museum for many, many years. And of course, you probably watched your news of late where we've actually opened up our new Heritage Center, and the aircraft, once the funds become available, I understand the aircraft will again be moved and placed out front. This is RCMP Air Division, Rockcliffe. You'll all recognize that building is still there. The hangars is still being used by the musical ride. And it's got, if memory serves, well, clearly it's got the goose. We can all figure that one out. But I believe these are both MPH and MPI.
Some of them have 3-bay props in the previous
that's
photos.
RCF beats there. They got 2-bladed props, and you're bringing the others up from the States with 3-bladed props. Okay,
thank you very much for that. There we go. Thank you. That's exactly the type of stuff I need. Unknown Beach. I don't know what they're doing, but they've got it all apart. Eventually, we'd lose one of the expediters, Mike Papa Alpha, in a hangar fire. If memory serves, I think that was Edmonton. Another one of those, actually a good thing, because in short order we moved from the expediter to the King Air, which for the RCMP Air Services at that time was a quantum leap. We actually still operate a King Air because we've actually assumed responsibility for CAHS's aircraft in the last year or so. We have an MOU, we're operating the aircraft, it actually works out of Montreal, but the deal is we take care of CAHS requirements in Canada as we can. In due course, the RCMP would operate, I'm just switching focus a little bit here, we'd end up operating 15 de Havilland Canada Beavers. MPM operated from Winnipeg. Operating from Winnipeg actually bore no step markings in Cree, and don't touch here and don't walk around here, because the folks, of course, not unlike us, were really curious. But those markings were actually in Cree. This is Mike Papa November. This is on 4th of September 1952. The aircraft ended up in B Division, Newfoundland, and now Labrador. And this is the date its delivery is being accepted. Depicts Special Constable Lindsay and Corporal Hamelin, who is the pilot. That would be the chap in the Stetson. Accepting delivery of MPN from DHC representative Mr. L. Appleyard. The first air section in Newfoundland was opened in 1953. So this segues nicely. We got the aircraft, and then we went along and opened the air section. This is a shot of Mike Papa Echo. The pilot is Sergeant Don McKenzie. We have no idea who the constable is, 1971-72 in Grand Rapids. This photograph was obtained from a pilot by the name of Hans de Kock, who still flies with us. Beaver, Mike Papa Romeo. Mike Papa Alpha, 1968. Again, Beaver. I'm given the direction the guys are walking in. I think they're probably taking it apart, but I'm not positive. And again, no details as to where, just a wonderful photograph, very evocative, and we don't know where it was taken or when. This is one I'm sure you've seen before. This again is a photograph that was obtained. This is one that Patty Gardner obtained from the North Bay Nugget. This is Mike Papa. It was flying over Highway 11 near North Bay, Ontario in May of 1958. Lost an engine, set down exactly where you can see it. Flew another engine in, put it all back together again, got a different pilot, took it off. I like that photograph. You can see these guys in the back.
I guess you realize that's an otter, not a beaver.
Sorry, you'd be right. So this is Mike Papa 1954, again, somewhere in the Arctic. That doesn't narrow it down a whole heck of a lot. But again, an evocative photograph. We got the pilots, we got some people standing by, First Nations folk wondering what the heck is going on. This is our Stinson, May 1947. We only had the one Stinson. It served primarily in Saskatchewan. The laboratory services used it there an awful lot. Saskatchewan, May 47 as it is now, an incredibly busy part of the organization. A lot of flying, a lot of crime, a lot of need for laboratory services. And the lab eventually persuaded the force they should have their own aircraft and pilot because they were spending, in their view, an inordinate amount of time driving hither, thither, and yon, collecting exhibits. So this aircraft now sits at the Reynolds Alberta Museum in Wetaskiwin. Imagine some of you have certainly seen it there. One of the former RCMP pilots actually purchased the aircraft, as I recall, as a basket case, put it all back together again, and ultimately in due course, we'd operate 11 Twin Otters. That's certainly the aircraft I remember from my time in the territories. I was first up there in 1980 through 1989, and also did 3 years in Labrador, 94, 97. All of it with Twin Otter flying. Slow, but reliable and efficient, and for moving people and skidoos and 3 or 4 dead bodies and whatever you want to do, if you're in no great rush, the Twin Otter will do it for you. We were just talking today that in due course, given that we still operate 2 of them, as I mentioned earlier, one in Whitehorse and one in Goose Bay, given that Viking has started up in due course, I wouldn't be at all surprised if we started buying Twin Otters again. The Pilatus, which I'll touch on later, is a wonderful aircraft and it does a whole lot, but you know, you guys are in aviation, you know better than I. Sometimes the only thing that replaces a Twin Otter is a Twin Otter. This is the one that's stationed in Goose Bay. It was actually here today. We had to bring the pilots down in the aircraft for this, and this, and oh look, it happens to be a day we want to have an open house, which actually made it a little bit more difficult because we had just had it for 2 months back in February, taking it all apart and putting it all back together again and giving it a new paint job. So this is February this year. I was at the hangar, the overhaul shop. So we're just going to move us back here a little bit, or all over the place, whatever way you want to look at it. After the loss of Otter MPZ at Deer Lake in 1971, the force figured, geez, you know what, we should get a Bell 212, which we did. Why, I don't know. Way more capacity, way more expensive than we possibly needed, but we used it. That was our first helicopter. We now have 9 helicopters in our fleet. As I touched earlier on, we've got 38, 40 aircraft, depending on what's being traded in, traded off. Actually, I think as of today, we probably have 38 aircraft. 9 of them are helicopters. And, of course, an invaluable tool. I'll touch later on some of the work that Air 1, our Vancouver traffic enforcement helicopter, is doing in the lower mainland of BC. We entered the jet age, temporarily as it turned out in 1987 with the purchase of a Cessna 550 Citation. We looked at a Challenger apparently, but people figured it was too big. And in due course, we also ended up with an IAI Westwind. And then, of course, politics intervened, and my God, you can't have your National Police Force flying a jet. So away they went. And we're still battling with that today, which is really asinine, but I digress. The most important aspect of our organization, of course, is the 150 pilots, aircraft maintenance engineers, civilian members, regular members, clerks, parts personnel, flight coordinators, these 150 people that work tirelessly across Canada. I'm going to say it again, serving Canadians, serving you folk. I am blessed with an incredibly good team of people. Just to allude very quickly back to Tim's comment that I asked for the job and I got it, to my complete and utter dismay. One of the lines I used to validate that premise, excuse me, in fact, my biggest fear right now is that someone from officer staffing sees me and says, wait a minute, Henderson looks happy. So, if anyone ever asks, you know that son of a gun that's in charge of Air Serivces, he's a miserable son of a... And these people hate him, which may or may not be true, but in any event, I'm happy to be where I am. Today, the RCMP fleet is comprised of 38 aircraft. We're centrally located at 18 different locations across the country. Vancouver would be the largest single unit with 5 different aircraft. Most of the units consist of 1 aircraft. We have 13 Pilatus dotted across all over Canada. The Pilatus generally, for example, will pick, Yellowknife. It'll be 1 aircraft. There's probably a need for 2 or 3. We have 1, 2 pilots and an engineer.
Yeah.